Hey Krishna everyone, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. Welcome to you all. Here it's Ekadashi. I don't know if it is there where you are, but I dutifully chanted my 64 rounds today. I've been doing that for many years on every Ekadashi. But my voice after doing 64 rounds is not quite together, so you'll have to tolerate that. One day, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was giving a lecture in a place called Munjer. It was on the bank of the Ganga. And an earth tremor caused a mild flooding of the Ganga, and the water came up a little but then soon receded, after which Srila Saraswati Thakur said this: in due course, Mahapralaya, devastating floods, will inundate the entire universe. He was always thinking Krishna consciously, obviously. If you attempt to survive by swimming in that deluge, then do not neglect to take hold of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. Or if you cannot hold all three, then release Bhagavad Gita. If necessary, you may also relinquish Srimad Bhagavatam, but under no circumstances release your hold on Sri Caitanya-caritämrta. For if this one book remains, then the flood can do no actual damage. Because after the flood has subsided, the message of Shastra can be revived from Sri Caitanya-caritämrta alone, it being the essence of all Shastra. Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jai Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Okay. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just told the story of the deliverance of Mrigari, the hunter, by Narada Muni. We're on text 278, chapter 24 of the Madhya-lila, in which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu instructs Sanatana Goswami in the meanings of the famous Atmarama verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this pastime is just finishing up. Mrigari. Parvat Muni continued, my dear friend Narada Muni, you are glorified as the sage among the demigods. By your mercy, even a low-born person like this hunter can immediately become attached to Lord Krishna. Purport. A pure Vaishnava believes in the statements of the Shastras. This verse is quoted from the Vedic literature, the Skanda Purana. 279. Narada Muni then asked the hunter, my dear Vaishnava, do you have some income for your maintenance? The hunter replied, my dear spiritual master, whoever you send gives me something when he comes to see me. Purport. This confirms the statement in the Bhagavad Gita 9.22 to the effect that the Lord carries all the necessities to his Vaishnava devotee. Narada Muni asked the former hunter how he was being maintained, and he replied that everyone who came to him brought him something for his maintenance. Krishna, who was situated in everyone's heart, says, I personally carry all necessities to a Vaishnava. He can order anyone to execute this. Everyone is ready to give something to a Vaishnava. And if a Vaishnava is completely engaged in devotional service, he need not be anxious for his maintenance. Text 280. The former hunter said, "Please do not send so much grain. Only send what is sufficient for 2 people, no more." Purport. The former hunter only wanted enough for 2 people to eat, not more, no more. It is not necessary for a Vaishnava to keep a stock of food for the next day. He should receive only sufficient grain to last 1 day. The next day he must again depend on the Lord's mercy. This is the instruction of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When his personal servant Govinda sometimes kept a stock of haritaki, myrobalan, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu chastised him, saying, "Why did you keep a stock for the next day?" Srila Rupa Goswami and others were begging daily from door to door for their sustenance, and they never attempted to stock their ashram with food for the next day. We should not materially calculate, thinking it is better to stock food for a week. Why give the Lord trouble by having him bring food daily? One should be convinced that the Lord will provide daily. There is no need to stock food for the next day. High devotional standard. Very difficult in the West to do that completely. We just take what we need and use what we need, that's all. Text 281. Narada Muni approved his not wanting more than a daily supply of food, and he blessed him, saying, "You are fortunate." Narada Muni and Parvata Muni then disappeared from that place. Thus I have narrated the incident of the hunter. By hearing this narration, one can understand the influence of association with devotees. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to stress that even a hunter, the lowest of men, could become a topmost Vaishnava simply by associating with Narada Muni or a devotee in his bona fide disciplic succession. 283. In this way we have found 3 more meanings, oh my God, of the Atmarama verse. Combine these with the other meanings, and the total number of meanings adds up to 26 in all. 284. There is yet another meaning, which is full of variety of imports. Actually, there are 2 gross meanings and 32 subtle meanings. Purport. The 2 gross meanings refer to regulative devotional service and spontaneous devotional service. There are also 32 subtle meanings. Under the heading of regulative devotional service, there are 16 meanings based on understanding the word Atmarama to mean 1. A servant of the Lord and his personal associate. 2. A personal friend. 3. Personal parents or similar superiors. 4. A personal beloved. 5. A servant elevated by spiritual cultivation. 6. A friend by spiritual cultivation. 7. Parents and superior devotees by cultivation of devotional service. 8. A beloved wife or female friend by cultivation of devotional service. 9. A mature devotee as a servant. 10. A mature devotee as a friend. 11. A mature devotee as a parent and superior. 12. A mature devotee as a wife and beloved. 13. An immature devotee as a servant. 14. An immature devotee as a friend. 15. An immature devotee as a father or superior. And 16. An immature devotee as a beloved. Similarly, under the heading of spontaneous devotional service, there are also 16 various associates. Therefore, the total number of devotees under the headings of regulated devotees and spontaneous devotees is 32. Text 285. The word Atma refers to all the different personalities of Godhead. One of them is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself, Krishna, and the others are different incarnations or expansions of Krishna. Purport. The word Atma also includes all kinds of personalities known as Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that Krishna has unlimited expansions. This is described in the Brahma Samhita 546. Diparchir eva hi dancharatam abhyupetya dipayate vrivita hetu samana dharma yastadrik eva hichavish nutaya vibhati govindam adipurusham tamaham bhajami. The expansions of Krishna are thus compared to candles that have been lit from an original candle. All the secondary candles are equally powerful, but the original candle is that from which all the others have been lit. Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He is expanded as Balaram, Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Vasudev. In this way there are innumerable incarnations and expansions who are also called Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Regarding the variety of personalities known as Bhagavan, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that the personality of Godhead known as Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that His expansions are also called the Personality of Godhead. In other words, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the origin of all other personalities of Godhead. Speculative philosophers and mystic yogis also meditate upon the form of Krishna, but this form is not the form of the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such a Bhagavan is but a partial representation of the Lord's full potency. Nonetheless, He also has to be understood to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To clarify this matter, one should simply understand that Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj in Vrindavan, the friend of the cowherd boys and lover of the gopis, is actually the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is attained by spontaneous love. Although His expansions are also called the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are attained only by the execution of regulative devotional service. Text 286. One who always engages in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called Atmarama. There are two types of Atmaramas. One is an Atmarama engaged in regulative devotional service, and the other is an Atmarama engaged in spontaneous devotional service. 287. Both the Atmaramas engaged in regulative devotional service and those engaged in spontaneous devotional service are further categorized into four groups. They are the eternal associates, the associates who have become perfect by devotional service, and those who are practicing devotional service and are called sadhakas, of whom there are two varieties. Text 288. Those who are practicing devotional service are either mature or immature. Therefore, the sadhakas are of two types. Since the devotees execute either regulative devotional service or spontaneous devotional service, there are four groups within these two divisions. Altogether, there are 8 varieties. By executing regulative devotional service, one is elevated to the platform of an eternally perfect associate, such as a servant, friend, superior, or beloved woman. Each of these is of 4 varieties. Among those who have perfected themselves by devotional service, there are servants, friends, superiors, and beloved damsels. Similarly, there are 4 types of mature devotees. Within the category of regulated devotional service, there are also immature devotees. These are also of 4 categories or varieties. Thus, in regulative devotional service, there are also altogether 16 varieties. On the path of spontaneous devotional service, there are also 16 categories of devotees. Thus, there are 32 types of Atmaramas enjoying the Supreme Lord on these 2 paths. When these 32 types of devotees are qualified with the words Muni, Nirgranta, Cha, and Api, the meanings can be increased in different ways and very soundly elaborated upon. 294. When we add the 26 types of devotees to the 32, they altogether number 58. You may now hear from me of further manifestations of meanings. Hare Krishna. 295. In this way, as I add the word cha to one word after another, I make a compound. Thus, the different names of Atmaramas can be taken 58 times. 296. In this way, one can repeat the word Atmarama with cha for each of the 58 meanings by following the rule previously stated and rejecting all but the last. We retain that which represents all the meanings. 297. Of words having the same form and case determination, the last one is the only one retained. Purport. This is a quotation from Panini's Sutras 1.2, 64. 298. When all the chakaras, or additions of the word cha, are taken away, 58 different meanings can still be understood by the one word Atmarama. 299. By the plural word vrikshaha, trees, all trees, such as banyan trees, fig trees, kapita trees, and mango trees, are indicated. 31. Text 300. The Atmarama verse is like the sentence, in this forest many trees, many different trees bear fruit. All Atmaramas render devotional service to Lord Krishna. After uttering the word Atmarama 58 times and taking cha in a sense of aggregation, one may add the word Muniyaha. That will mean that great sages also render devotional service to Lord Krishna. In this way, there are 59 meanings. Text 302. Taking the word Nirgranta and considering api in the sense of sustenance, I have tried to explain a 59th meaning of the verse. Text 303. Taking all the words together, there is another meaning. Whether one is an Atmarama, a great sage, or a Nirgranta, everyone must engage in the service of the Lord. Purport. The word sarma The word sarva samuchaye is significant here. It includes all classes of men, Atmaramas, Munis, and Nirgranthas. Everyone must engage in the service of the Lord, taking the word api in the sense of ascertainment. There are altogether 60 different meanings. It's amazing. Text 304. The word api is then used in the sense of ascertainment, and then the word eva can be uttered 4 times with 4 words. 306. The words urukrama, bhakti, ahaituki, and kurvanti are added to the word eva again and again. Thus, another meaning is explained. Now I have given 60 different meanings of the verse, and yet there is another meaning, which is also very strongly evident. 307. The word Atma also refers to the living entity who knows about his body. That is another symptom. From Lord Brahma down to the insignificant ant, everyone is counted as the marginal potency of the Lord. 308. Visnu Shakti Para Prokta Chitragya Kya Tata Para Abidya Karma Sangyanya Tritiya Shaktirishyate. The potency of Lord Vishnu is summarized in 3 categories, namely the spiritual potency, the living entities, and ignorance. The spiritual potency is full of knowledge. The living entities, although belonging to the spiritual potency, are subject to bewilderment. And the third energy, which is full of ignorance, is always visible in fruitive activities. Purport. This is a quotation from the Vishnu Purana. For an explanation, see Madhya-lila 7:119. Text 309. The word Kshetragya refers to the living entity, the enjoyer, the chief, and material nature. Purport. This is a quotation from the Svarga Varga 7 of the Amara Kosha Dictionary. 310. The living entities are wandering in different types of life on different planets. But if by chance they get the association of a pure devotee, sadhu, they give up all other engagements and engage in the service of Lord Krishna. Text 311. I have thus explained 60 different meanings, and all of them aim at the service of Lord Krishna. After giving so many examples, that is the only meaning. Boiling it down. 312. Now, due to your association, another meaning has awakened. It is due to your devotional service that these waves of meaning are arising. Even Lord Chaitanya would never just a second, I've got to answer this one thing. Sorry, I just got an important letter I had to answer. Sorry. Okay. So now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving all the credit for all of that incredibly wonderful analysis and philosophy to Sanatana Goswami, which is very interesting because I've always understood from preaching for 48 years that sometimes it's very easy to explain things and sometimes it's very difficult. And I found that the reason is that the receptivity of the ears of the person you're speaking to, even if there's some in the audience that are either antagonistic or argumentative, makes it more difficult. So this is a wonderful idea. I'll read this verse again, 3:12. Now, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking, now, due to your association, another meaning has awakened. It is due to your devotional service that these waves of meaning are arising. Purport. The word Atma refers to the living entity. From Lord Brahma down to an insignificant ant, everyone is considered a living entity. Living entities are considered part of the Lord's marginal potency. All of them are Kshetragya, knowers of the body. When they become nirgranta, or free, saintly persons, they engage in Lord Krishna's service. That is the 61st meaning of the verse. 3:13. Lord Shiva said, I may know, Shukadev Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, may know, and Vyasadeva may know or may not know Srimad Bhagavatam. On the whole, Srimad Bhagavatam, the spotless Purana, can be learned only through devotional service, not by material intelligence, speculative methods, or imaginary commentaries. Purport. Devotional service includes 9 processes, beginning with hearing, chanting, and remembering the activities of Lord Visnu. Only one who has taken to devotional service can understand Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the spotless Purana for a transcendentalist, Paramahamsa. So-called commentaries are useless for this purpose. According to the Vedic injunction, Yasya Devi Para Bhaktir Yata Devi Tata Guru, all Vedic literatures maintain that Srimad Bhagavatam has to be learned from the person Bhagavata. And to understand it, one has to engage in pure devotional service. Srimad Bhagavatam cannot be understood by so-called erudite scholars or grammarians. One who has developed pure Krishna consciousness and has served the pure devotee, the spiritual master, can understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Others cannot. Text 3:14. After hearing all the explanations of all the different meanings of the Atmarama verse, Sanatana Goswami was struck with wonder, just like the rest of us. He fell down at the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and began to offer prayers. Sanatana Goswami said, My dear Lord, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the son of Maharaj Nanda. All the Vedic literatures are vibrated through your breathing. 3:16. My dear Lord, you are the original speaker of the Bhagavatam. You therefore know its real import, but for you, no one can understand the confidential meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam. Purport. Following this statement, by Srila Sanatana Goswami, we have written our introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, pages 1 to 41. That's his famous introduction. 317. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied, "Why are you glorifying me personally? You should understand the transcendental position of Srimad Bhagavatam. Why don't you consider this important point?" 318. Srimad Bhagavatam is as great as Krishna, the Supreme Lord and shelter of everything. In each and every verse of Srimad Bhagavatam and in each and every syllable there are various meanings. 319. The form of Srimad Bhagavatam is given in questions and answers. Thus the conclusion is established. By hearing these questions and answers, one is highly astonished. 320. Now that Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth, this is a good verse, Bruhi Yogeshware Krishne, Brahmanye Dharmavarmani, Swam Kashtang Adunopete, Dharma Kang Sharanam Gataha. Now that Sri Krishna, the Absolute Truth, the Master of all mystic powers, has departed for his own abode, please tell us by whom religious principles are presently protected. Purport. This verse is from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.23. It was a question raised by all the sages who were headed by Shonaka. This question, put before the great devotee, Sutta Goswami, is the foremost of the 6 questions raised. The answer to this important question is given in the next verse, also from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.3.43. Krishne Sudhamo Pagate Dharma Jnana Dibi Saha Kalau Nashtadrisham Esha Puranarko Dunoditaha. After Lord Krishna departed for his own abode, along with religious principles and transcendental knowledge, this Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, has arisen like the sun in this age of Kali to enlighten those who have no spiritual vision. Text 322. In this way, like a madman, I have explained the meaning of just one verse. I do not know who will take this as evidence. So the point he's making here is that the evidence is there for all of us to see, but some will take the evidence. Some will evaluate the evidence properly, and some not. Text 323. If one becomes a madman like me, he may also understand the meaning of Srimad Bhagavatam by this process. Purport. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu plainly explains that Srimad Bhagavatam cannot be understood by those who are materially situated. In other words, one has to become a madman, like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Apart from being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is an Acharya who exhibited love of God like a madman. According to his own written verse, Yugayitam Nimeshena, he says that for him, a moment seems to last 12 years. Chakshusha Pravishayitam, my tears are flowing like torrents of rain. Shunyayitam Jagat Sarvam, I feel as if the entire universe were vacant. Why? Govinda Vidahena Me, due to my being separated from Govinda, Krishna. One can understand Srimad Bhagavatam only by following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was mad for Krishna. We cannot, of course, imitate Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It is not possible. However, unless one is very serious about understanding Krishna, he cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam gives the full narration of Krishna's transcendental activities. The first 9 cantos explain who Krishna is, and the Lord's birth and activities are narrated in the 10th canto. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated, Janma karma chame divyam. Krishna's appearance and disappearance are transcendental, not mundane. A person is eligible to return home back to Godhead if he perfectly understands Krishna and his appearance and disappearance. This is verified by Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita 4.9. Tyaktva dehang punarjanma naitimam eti sorjuna. It is therefore concluded that one has to learn about Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, and that to do so, one has to follow in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Those who do not follow Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cannot understand the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 324. Folding his hands, Sanatana Goswami said, "My Lord, you ordered me to write a directory about the activities of Vaishnavas." 325. I am a most low-born person. I have no knowledge of good behavior. How is it possible for me to write authorized directions about Vaishnava activities? Purport. Actually, Sanatana Goswami belonged to a very respectable Brahmana family. Nonetheless, he submitted himself as a fallen, low-born person because he had served in the Muslim government. A Brahmana is never supposed to engage in anyone's service. Serving others for a livelihood, paricharyatmakam karma, is the business of Shudras. The Brahmana is always independent and busy studying Shastra and preaching Shastra to subordinate social members such as Kshatriyas and Vaishyas. Sanatana Goswami felt unfit to write Vaishnava Smriti about the behavior of Vaishnavas because he had fallen from the Brahminical position. Thus, Sanatana Goswami clearly admits that the Brahminical culture should be standardized. Presently in India, so-called Brahmanas are almost all engaged in some mundane service, and they do not understand the import of the Vedic Shastras. Nonetheless, they are passing themselves off as Brahmanas on the basis of birth. In this connection, Sanatana Goswami declares that a Brahmana cannot be engaged in anyone's service if he wants to take a leading part in society. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni states that even if a Brahmana is in a difficult position, he should not accept the occupation of a Shudra. This means that he should not be engaged in service for another, for this is the business of dogs. Under the circumstances, Sanatana Goswami felt very low because he had accepted a position of service in the Muslim government. The conclusion is that no one should claim to be a Brahmana simply by birthright while engaging in someone else's service. And I will stop our reading tonight. It's almost 8 o'clock. We are all being blessed big time by Srila Prabhupada, by Sanatana Goswami Prabhupada, and by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. We should be enriched, feel enriched, and completely satisfied in one sense, and dissatisfied that we want to know more and more. We want to get more and more association. And we do that by continuing to hear Srila Prabhupada's books again and again, because it's all there, all that we need. Hare Krishna. So, 8 o'clock it is. Any reflections, discussions, comments?
There's a comment from Gopakanya Devidas.
Mm-hmm.
She says, Jai Maharaj, Hare Krishna, Happy Ekadashi, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Today I made 32 rounds, but only in quantity. Please bless me that I put more effort in attentive chanting, Maharaj. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
So be it. So be it. Hare Krishna.
And from Bhakta Ben.
Haribo Bhakta Ben.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I love that point that Krishna causes so many interesting things to come out of our mouths whilst preaching to receptive hearers.
Yes.
It reminds me of how Prabhupada used to have devotees read his own books back to him to hear what Krishna had said through him.
Exactly. I recall, and I included this in one of my recent offerings to Prabhupada over it was one of the last 4, 5 or 6 years, that in Australia one time, the devotees were having this kind of argument, there was some argument going on. And Srila Prabhupada was present. Somehow or other he was present. And so Prabhupada said, get one of my books. And they got his book and they said, open it up and start to read. And the devotees just sat there and Prabhupada listened to a devotee reading his own books. And everyone became completely satisfied and the atmosphere became peaceful. The argument was no longer there. And in that way Prabhupada solved the whole situation just by reading his books out loud. That is the real thing. To have that realization is the real thing. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Bhakta Ben.
Next is something from Dayal Nitai. Dayal Nitai?
Dayal Nitai. Hare Krishna.
He says, Dear Srila Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisance. On the topic of evidence, 1. What would we say is the definition of evidence? It's 2 parts, but that's the first part.
Well, that's a huge question. I mean, evidence means that there's something external or there's something that's happened that proves a point. And so there's unlimited varieties of points to be proven, and there's unlimited varieties of evidence to prove those points. That's the principle. But in relationship with Krishna, when somebody says, show me God, Prabhupada would immediately say, you can't see God? He's right in front of you. Without the sun you can't see. Can you? And there's the sun, the evidence. Or the taste of water. This is the beginning of remembering Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. And in this way, it goes on and on until the Panchatattva appear. And they give the evidence of how it is that there's variety in the spiritual world. Krishna comes and appears and gives evidence of what the potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are. And there were so many witnesses to his pastimes and what he did. This is evidence. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's explanation of the Atmarama verse in 61 different ways is the evidence that the Absolute Truth exists and that he has unlimited knowledge. So that's what I meant by the evidence is there, but we have to be qualified to hear the evidence and to be able to evaluate the evidence to come to the proper conclusion.
The second part, he says, could you please elaborate on how evidence is subjective to various individuals' perceptions?
How evidence is
subjective to various individuals' perceptions.
Because everything in the material world is relative to everything else. Everything is dependent on something else. In the material world, nothing is absolute. Therefore, the evidence is relative. One man's poison is another man's food. One person's medicine is another person's poison. One person's kind of activity is impossible for one person to do, but another person, it's his life and soul. So the material world is like that. It's full of subjective experience by each individual soul. But the Absolute Truth gives evidence that is applicable to all the souls. And that was one of the meanings of the Atmarama verse that we just heard from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Those things that are applicable to all the souls, that's the Absolute Truth. So Krishna is sitting in the heart of every living being, and he's the source of the Absolute Truth. And he can speak, just like we heard the example in the pastime of the hunter, the conversion of the hunter. You know, when he wondered, if I break my bow, the hunter, how will I live? How will I feed my family? And Narada Muni said, don't worry, we'll arrange it. And then, all the people that found out that he had become a sadhu, and very shocking that a hunter could become a great sadhu, great saintly person, they all began to came and give. Why? Because Krishna's in the heart, and he gave everything. So subjective evidence, subjective experience, it depends on the spiritual realization of the person, subjectively. Some people struggle, some devotees even struggle if they're very neophyte. But devotees who are actually mature, and that's why there was a whole list of mature devotees, they don't have to struggle. Even they have needs that are seemingly more, not so simple. Like Prabhupada, he's in Vrindavan, he's got nothing. One piece of, hardly cloth to wear, hardly food to eat. If you look at his diary in Vrindavan, 1 paise here, 2 paise, and he kept track of every single incoming and outgoing. And he had nothing. But he was deeply absorbed in translating the Bhagavatam and planning how to make the world Krishna conscious. So when the need arose, even though he came to America with nothing, literally, a couple of sacks of, chidwa or granola or something, and 3 or 4 trunks of books, 200 sets of his Bhagavatams. That was all he had, and the cloth on his back. That was it. No friends, no relatives, no supporters. He had this one person who sponsored him that he had met, his son, his father in, I think it was Agra. Anyway, but then when Prabhupada needed, when Prabhupada was tested completely, and he was the one that was meant to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Then what happened? He started getting facilities and resources. And by the time he left, he had more buildings and more adulation from more different kinds of people from all over the world than anybody. That's evidence. If you would look at it in a different slice of time, and you just saw Prabhupada when he was in Vrindavan and he had nothing, you would think, oh, what can he do? And then, 10 years later, he's being worshipped by everybody in India, practically. Evidence. Everyone is judged by Krishna, by the evidence of their dedication, of their, what Prabhupada said? Yes, their freedom of ulterior motives. A pure devotee means a devotee who has no ulterior motives. That means personal motives. His only motive is to please his spiritual master in Krishna. And that person may be anywhere. He may be a king. He may be a pauper in the street. He may be anything. Maybe a renunciate. Maybe a householder. Maybe a king. Maybe a mendicant. And yet Krishna is supplying their needs. He's supplying everyone's needs. That is the evidence. Hare Krishna.
This is from Karen. She said, from Karen, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, Karen.
There's something here from Rati Manjari.
Haribol Rati, Hare Krishna.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Tonight we heard how a devotee should not stalk for more than one day, but should daily depend on Krishna to provide for us. I find this very hard because I am so attached to my own schemes, and unfortunately I do not yet have sufficient faith in Krishna as my maintainer.
So listen, it also said in that section that cannot be imitated. We can't imitate. In the West, it's different. If you try not to stalk up in the West, you won't be able to live. You'll die, or something horrible may happen, because the different culture is completely different. So Prabhupada adjusted these kinds of things. These things are not meant to be taken absolutely. Like it's when we first started reading these books, and devotees tried to become like Rupa Goswami or Sanatana Goswami. I personally watched. I'm not going to mention any names, but I watched devotees try to imitate that and not sleep, not eat. And they got sick, and some of them went crazy, and some of them became maimed for life. Trying to imitate. We can't imitate. We take what we need to live in the place that we're living in, under the circumstances we have to in our service, in so many things. But I have personal experience. When I came here, Krishna put me here, and all of a sudden all these things started coming that I didn't ask for. And it's so clear what Krishna wants me to do. And all the things that I need to do it were sent practically without me asking. So this is the evidence. And when that evidence comes into your life, because you only have one thing in mind, and that's to preach Krishna consciousness, even though you may be stuck in a little flat in the middle of, a little place in England, Krishna arranges. Krishna arranges everything. Just like he arranges for you to be able to go out and preach and chant and do your music and get devotees inspired to do kirtan and get involved in the book publications and translating. You can't take that rule and apply it in all times and circumstances. That's what acharya means. Acharya means they have to find the means according to the time and circumstance to engage the followers in Krishna consciousness. He didn't ask Prabhupada Maharaj to act like that. He's overseeing, he's a king. So it depends on our position, our prarabdha karma, or the birth we've obtained, and our capabilities, our talents, and our abilities. And each of those things should be used in Krishna service. So if you can adjust that and not take too much, here in the West, the weather and the way the food is transported and the supply chains and all those different things, they're different. And therefore we have to use those things. We use everything in Krishna's service, and that is the way that the earth will be purified. And we can see it in those places where we're sincerely trying to serve Krishna. Now there's 4 of us living here. We don't have any income, fixed income coming in, and yet we're all being taken care of. In another case, you're alone with your son, and you have developed a career, which is quite commendable actually. And it's an honest occupation, and you're doing it nicely. And that's the evidence. Krishna's taking care of you. Hare Krishna.
She says, thank you, that is reassuring. Tomorrow we will go out again with a group of devotees to yet another province in Holland.
Hare Krishna.
Please bless us, bless all of us.
Oh, so be it, so be it. I told you, I live vicariously for you because I'm an old, decrepit, half-debilitated person and I can't go out and do anything, plus I'm locked down. But I live through watching you and others doing this. I watch Abhay Das Brahmachari, my able servant. He goes out every day and just sits down in a place in the high street and chants. And now gradually people are beginning to, respond to him and reciprocate with him. It's amazing. He does it just by himself. According to our capacity, according to time and place, there's always something to do for Krishna. I just finished writing 15 letters just this afternoon, preaching to different people from around the world, answering their questions and encouraging them. And here we are. Daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books. It's the evidence. I mean, we don't have so many people, watching live. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but we have 2,500, more than 2,500 followers now. At some time or other, they're tuning in. So this is miraculous. Another devotee may have 25,000 people doing that. It's relative to our need and our ability and our position and our mood and our nature. Some people have 50,000 disciples. Some people have no disciples, or 1 or 2. Loknath Maharaj had only 1. Gaura Das Babaji had only one, but who was that? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, like that. Hare Krishna.
Dora Nitai says, many thanks for your kind and helpful reply.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Danitai.
Oh, something from Ben.
Bhakta Ben.
He says, it seems it's not possible to be without ulterior motive and peaceful simultaneously, particularly in relation to desiring Sankirtan marathon victory, trying very hard to let go and leave the result to Krishna.
That is called spiritual anxiety. One time Srila Prabhupada was asked, how can I tell if I'm advancing in Krishna consciousness? And Srila Prabhupada immediately answered, how much anxiety are you in? You're in your anxiety to win the marathon. I'm in anxiety because I want to get all the major books of Srila Prabhupada done properly and nicely in audiobook format. And that's a lot of things that are involved in that. Then he said, just like Madhya-lila, she's constantly in anxiety. Running after Krishna, he's going to fall into the lake and drown. Is he going to, when Krishna's a baby? Is he going to touch fire? So she's constantly in anxiety. There's one verse, I think it's in one of the Govinda-lilamrita or someplace, where it says that Madhya-lila looked like she had, 50 forms because she was moving so fast and doing so many things for Krishna. So that isn't necessarily a spiritual or an ulterior motive. It's an anxiety to get people out, to get the books out. It's an anxiety to help other people. It may be mixed. You may be mixed. But the activity is pure. And the result is pure. People are getting Krishna consciousness. And as you do it, gradually you'll be purified. And you'll do it spontaneously, out of love. In the meantime, relish that anxiety to do better for Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Rati Manjari says, you are the wind blowing in my sails.
Hare Krishna.
Last comment as of now from Shantarupa Devi Dasi. She says, this association is vital. So lucky we are. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you all. Thank you. You're giving me something to do in devotional service. You're engaging me in devotional service. And this is a wonderful devotional service. So happy. Sri Caitanya-caritämrta ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol. See you tomorrow night. Same place. The Haven. Same time. Same topic. Krishna consciousness. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Hari Bol. See you tomorrow.